Hello, Josette.
Hello, Matt. How are you doing, darling?
I said that fast because I was trying to get in there before you did.
I love how it's become a competition. It's absolutely ridiculous.
I'm waiting to see if there's anticipation. I go.
That's so good. Well, welcome.
This was a fun combo, wasn't it?
There you go. Now we're talking over each other.
Yeah, there we go. Let's try that again.
Well, this was it. Oh, no. Why is this so hard today?
From the top.
Because we've been doing a 3-hour podcast. That's why.
I know.
All right, from the top.
All right, here we go. Hello, Josette.
Hello, Matt. How are you doing, dearest?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm even better after this wonderful conversation we just finished having. Today, we got to interview the great Brent Findley. And wow, what a conversation. Mm-hmm. What a human being. I call him in the episode the real life Ted Lasso, and he really is supervising sound editor and just general sound genius.
He's kind of seen it all from the point of view from post-production in that sound department. And so he has so many unique perspectives on how movies are made. And we talked a lot about that, a lot about Ted Lasso, on which he's the supervising sound editor. And some nice sort of industry secrets, but also just what lights him up creatively, how he comes up with his ideas, and how the simplest thing becomes the most important thing sometimes.
Yeah, and I love also that, I say it in the episode, but how I think that, sound is often a very misunderstood or just unknown entity in filmmaking for the average person on the street. And even for people who are involved in production, they don't really realize how much goes into post-production sound. So I think it's just a fascinating conversation as far as like getting to know a little bit more about what goes into the television shows you're watching, when you're sitting down to just enjoy an episode of Ted Lasso, like what actually goes into making that thing. So I think this is a fascinating treat. And
me too.
Yeah, Brent is working obviously currently on Ted Lasso, and he has an upcoming series, which we're very much looking forward to, called WeCrashed. And he worked,
the story of WeWork.
The story of WeWork, yeah. Very looking forward to watching that. And he's worked on a gazillion other projects, of course, some of which we mentioned. And I am blessed to have worked with him on my short film, A Shame. So, yeah.
Well, this was a good one. We had a great time, and we hope you all enjoy our conversation with Brent Findley.
Oh my gosh, I love every time I see you on a Zoom call, Brent, you're like at a different location. That's so fabulous how he messes with his Zoom background. So he always just looks like he's on. Last time I think I Zoomed with you, you were on an exotic island somewhere with palm trees blowing in the breeze. I'm just like, this guy's life is amazing. Yeah. He's never seeing any real sun, but I mean, it looks like he is. That's the main thing.
I had the Best Buy parking lot up for a while. That was fun.
Oh my god!
It had just been restriped, so it was completely empty, which you never see, and it looked amazing. It was a really good striping job. I was impressed.
That's hilarious. Which Best Buy was it?
I don't know. I think it was a shot off the internet. It was an ad. I think for the parking lot company was like really proud of their striping work.
Oh my god, we got to put this up. That's amazing.
Yeah. And so. And so when I would stand far enough away, it would look like I'm in the parking lot. So it was great. Yeah. I'm zooming from the parking lot.
Oh my
so
gosh.
Fun. Like, I just finished up the job. What do you think behind me? And
just worked on their Magnolia room.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh no.
So, how have you guys been?
Well, I was just going to say, this is a huge honor to have you, and welcome to the Makers podcast officially, because knowing your schedule as one of the busiest men in Hollywood, this feels like a huge honor to gift us with an hour or so of your time. So thank you, dearest.
Appreciate your thinking of me. Glad to be here.
And also, before we start, I must just say that if people have been listening along to our podcast or just having conversations with me in real life, I think they all think I'm completely obsessed with you. So if you happen to hear any podcasts or random conversations, I promise it's not a strange obsession. I'm just deeply enamored with your work and who you are as a human being. So that's where that's coming from, Brent, in case you hear some stuff.
So I don't need to get the authorities involved. I should just be flattered.
You don't.
Thank you. Okay, great.
It hasn't become stalkerish just yet. So just wanted to inform you.
Flattery is how it always starts, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Next thing you know, you're wrestling somebody away in the parking lot of the Best Buy. You know.
Well, listen, you're the one doing a podcast with me, so I mean, I must be pretty okay, right? Surely.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, I'm not scared of you yet. So
Well, that's good. That's good because I'm hoping to work with you again soon. So there's
nice,
that.
I hope so too. and you, Matt. I mean, geez.
Yeah, man, it's so good to see you. It's been so long, and every now and then we connect. But I think the last time we connected was when I introduced you to Josette on her short film. I think that was the last time we talked. Yeah.
Yep, I think so too.
And that connection seemed to have worked out.
Oh my gosh, did it ever? I think I was definitely the person who got most out of that situation. So yeah, once again, Brent, thank you so much. I mean, for those who haven't heard the episode with Natasha, we do blow a lot of smoke up Brent's rear end without him knowing.
We do.
But yeah, basically just he came on board as our supervising sound editor, and I was hugely honored to have this level of genius and talent and experience involved in my very dear little project. And Brent came on and just gave more than any human being was ever asked to or I ever imagined would give, and became a producer and just next leveled the hell out of the project. So yeah, we are endlessly and forever in your debt. So thank you again.
Well, you're welcome, and it was great to be involved with that. It was, it moved me, and you hear about A-list actors or whatever doing projects because they love them.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what's motivating them is the subject matters, the story, and what they get to bring to it. And, it feels like that kind of thing, where I was motivated to, be from the feet up in on it. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thanks,
Well, that was I don't think I told Josette this when I first introduced you to, but you did the exact same thing on Platonic, our web series that we did in 2016 was exactly that. Was you said, you need a little bit more than just this. Let me become a producer and assist you in getting this thing off the ground and up on its feet and taking care of production sound, of course, but also essentially being, a major part of that project being as successful as it is. And it was kind of like baby film school for me, and what I learned from you was I've carried with me this whole entire journey
awesome.
on my side. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, great.
For those of you who don't know that are listening, Brent is actually the supervising sound editor of Ted Lasso, of course. I mean, among a gazillion other credits, we were just pouring over them again this morning, just trying to wrap our heads around what we'll actually talk about, because there's so many delicious projects. It's kind of crazy to know where to start. But we have actually called Brent the real life Ted Lasso after working with him, because I think that's part of the magic, though, Brent, because you just come with so much wisdom and joy and love, and you just give so freely. I think anyone who has the blessing of being able to work with you will walk away enriched in some way, because I feel we all just are learning from your wisdom, it's so wonderful to be able to collaborate with people that are so willing to share in that way. It really is cool.
Oh, well, thanks for saying so. I try not to cross the line into, oh, will you shut up already? Man, he just keeps talking.
Right. Well, that's never the problem, especially with your with your experience in production sound. Is like so that was the funny thing. So I'd worked with a lot of sound people on set. Like that's the thing about Brent, is that like on the he would be there on the day actually holding the boom, and it was just like way below your stature at even at the time, and so we appreciated you so much being there. But there'd be so many times where I'd be like, where'd Brent go? And then he'd be standing right here. And that's like the mark of a beautiful production sound, person, is when you're just like, wait, where did he go? And he's just right there. He's just this ghost, this apparition that captures everything, and you don't even know what's happening.
Is that how you started, Brent? I mean, did you start in production sound first of all on set before you went into your little dark room?
No,
and started making magic.
Began when I was a child. No,
well, this is actually what we want to know about.
Continue.
So yes, continue, please.
So, well, initially I started in the sound side of things, thinking of it as a career side, to be into music and music production. I was in bands and playing instruments and stuff, and I just loved that. Was drawn to it. And then through the process of learning about production and music production and sound, I was introduced to sync for picture, sound for picture. And a light bulb just went off, because always in the back of my mind, an apprehensive part about doing music for a living was I loved it so much, I didn't want to hate it because I had to do it. You know, like
Yep.
oh, this would be great on a Friday night if I wanted to do it, but now I have to do it. You know, like, I don't know. So, I mean, it could be very unfounded, because there are a lot of very successful musicians that absolutely love that going after it and making a living at it, part of it. But the sound per picture thing just clicked in my brain as made so much sense to me. It just was a very natural fit for what I had been doing as a kid and growing up and stuff, which I can get into if you want.
I'd love you to.
Absolutely.
But I went into audio post, and started as an intern. And I was in features, and kind of in that process, I met some people, and the production sound mixer, Joe Foglia on Scrubs, needed an intern on his production sound crew. And I got a phone call about that and didn't bat an eye. And that was kind of my introduction officially into production sound, where I fed and watered the crew. I didn't push any buttons or hold any microphones, but that I was, I had no right to. I'm just like figuring out what all this business is. And we had an ADR stage at the set. We converted the X-ray control room and patient room into a control room and a vocal booth, which was fantastic. And already pretty solid room, raised floor, so we could run the cables under the floor and just hung some blankets and stuff, and it sounded fantastic. So the post side that I already had some experience with came in handy. So I was recording ADR with actors on the set when they would between setups, between takes and things. So that was my introduction to production sound in a real world top tier exposure to like how to do it right. Looking at these things in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, there's got to be a shortcut to this. But then being able to ask, isn't there a better way? And like, yeah, these people doing this for 25, 30 years, they tried that shortcut and decided to do it this way.
Right. Yeah.
So not trying to reinvent the wheel, but learning and trying to understand what decisions went into how those processes work, and just observing and kind of where I learned to keep my mouth shut. Like, you don't want to be the sound guy that blows a take because of sound.
Oh my God, no.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know where the impetus was or what the inspiration was, but even my older brother, 3 years older than me, tells a story of when I was little, I had my own cassette tape, and my parents had a cassette player. I did not have a cassette player, but I had a cassette tape. And when my parents would leave, I would go pull on my brother's sleeve and say, could you get the tape player down? Because my parents would put it on the top of the bookshelf, out of my reach. Could you get that down for me? He'd get it down. I'd take my tape and I'd go record the beach. I'd record traffic, record birds.
No, this is so precious, Brent.
And I don't remember that part of it. I remember doing the recording and listening to the files, but I don't remember the process of the minutia of how did I get the tape? How did I get the recorder? Like that part wasn't important. What was cool to me was sitting up in my treehouse recording traffic going by,
That's cool.
Oh my gosh, that is the most adorable image in my mind, like baby little Brent, like with his little tape cassette player, like trying to get the traffic sound recorded in. I mean,
Oh yeah.
It's so bizarre to me that you just knew from such an early time, because not to say that sound is obscure. I just think for average people, I don't think they really realize quite how much or how important sound is in movie making. I think so often folks who aren't in the business sort of sit down to watch something and just let it wash over them and don't realize that really the sound is the thing that's kind of creating the world for you. And it often seems like such an obscure thing to get into sound, but you were doing it from young, from a kid.
Yeah, and then in like junior high and high school, I would run the sound for the school plays, and like Glass Menagerie, there's an offstage car horn honk. Well, I had my tape deck up second floor bedroom and honked my mom's car out in the driveway to get that proper perspective.
Oh, that's great!
And so playing that in the theater at the school, you swear someone just honked their horn outside.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh my goodness.
So trying to figuring those things out, I think I just love that process.
You were still sort of thinking music was your thing, though, right? Like while you're busy recording sounds for Glass Menagerie, you're still imagining that you'd end up ultimately in the music business.
Oh yeah, I couldn't wait for the play to get over because the local Star Search was going to go on. I was playing lead guitar. So
Great.
Gosh.
so,
What song did you guys play?
oh my gosh, which year was the? I played every year, right?
Yeah.
Every year that I could, we would do dumb stuff from. I say dumb stuff, but like it's not complex. But from Keep on Rockin' in a Free World. We did Sweet Child of Mine.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I Can't Fight This Feeling.
That's great. Yeah.
like all of the some of the hair band songs. It was, we did some Rush. Rush was a couple bands. So Rush, our technical band, we'd play Rush, and not necessarily a crowd pleaser because they don't really understand it, but it's really highly technical stuff and easy to get lost.
Yeah.
But we just Spirit of the Radio for a talent show, and I think we killed it.
Of course you did. Believe
Oh
it.
my gosh.
We hope you love listening to the Makers podcast as much as we love making it.
And if you would like to show your support and keep us going and keep us making magic and bringing these gorgeous creative conversations to you, perhaps you'd consider becoming a contributor to the Makers podcast. If you'd like to do so,
visit anchor.fm/themakers/support to get started. And now, back to the show. That's amazing. Well, you're talking about how you set up your recorder upstairs and then you went and honked the horn down to get that proper perspective. Would that just come naturally to you? It's not something that people think about, like you had said, Josette. When you watch a movie and you see that maybe we know in the business that a lot of it was ADR or whatever else, or with the elements of perspective and dimension and the voice going straight or up or whatever, or even how we don't say full sentences all the time, how we drop off words. These are all things that you have to manipulate as a person in post sound. Was that natural? Did that just come naturally to you?
Well, something like the car horn honk, I think, did come naturally. I say naturally, not like, I instinctively knew this needed to happen. But I think it's from the process of observing sounds, how they're replicated, how they're played back, and for things that felt wrong, like okay, I get it, but I don't believe it. Like, what can we do to believe it? We're adding this stuff in after the fact. So how do we do that without it feeling like it's a Post-it note stuck on the front of the screen? It's actually something that happened inside the scene. And so perfect example of that, we've got, I just this week, I guess it's not this week, today's Monday, it was last Friday, had an actor in where his character, he's playing a director, and he yells cut and grabs the script, he says coming in with notes, and walks away. And he walks off camera, and the camera goes to the people that were behind him watching the filming. They wanted to add stuff as he's walking away, and just have him improvise something like, I think he comes up with something like, Mike, that was great. Debbie, could be better. Needs to be, like just fun. It's a comedy, so it was fun stuff. Like, like, that was terrible. Do it again. Like it was funny. He was just ripping on him. So in the ADR stage, to sell that movement, I just had him walk away from the microphone while he's yelling the lines. Like, do that. So, because our perspective is from the point of view of the people that are still there, and he's leaving us. Because one of the toughest things for a re-recording mixer to do, it's not what I do, but I give my stuff to the re-recording mixer to make the stuff work, and I see what they wrestle with, and I see most of the time it is perspective. That's the toughest thing, is how to make something recorded in a pristine vocal booth with a wonderful microphone with great signal chain and no outside noise. How do we make it sound like it was there on the day in that whole mess of production? And a lot of that is matching. We call it for matching. It's like, I need to match what's happening, not be perfect.
Right.
So if somebody is on the move while they're saying their line, I'll have them roll their shoulders. Don't move their feet. I don't want to pick up their footsteps. But if they roll their shoulders, you can kind of get that into their voice. You can tell, you don't even have to see them, but you can tell that they're moving while they're talking.
Yeah.
That's so smart.
It's so cool because there's such a difference between too, just the physicality of a mic being placed in the center of a person's chest, on the day, as opposed to a mic that's hanging in front of them or whatever else. So many different things that you have to take into consideration when it comes to that. Can you tell us, so for those who don't know, give us an idea of what exactly a supervising sound editor does on any given project?
Yeah. Great question. So my responsibility is generalizing everything you hear is under my realm of responsibility.
Right.
We do have a music editor and a music department, and because of the creative nature of music and scoring and composition, that's its own path to the final mix. So I'm in communication with the composer and the music editor and the music supervisor, but I'm not responsible for their work. But we do coordinate. This is a big bombastic moment and there's a car explosion. I'll ask them maybe if they could not do a timpani or some big hit right on the moment of the explosion, because there isn't that kind of dynamic range, especially for television, for a huge musical impact plus an explosion to sound like an explosion. It's like, we got to pick one. So we'll have conversations about that. Like, Ross, what key is your music in? I'll make this car horn work with that. Like, I'll tune a car horn to be in the key of the music.
Wow,
if I want it to play well,
Yeah.
And if we want it to feel uncomfortable, like maybe there's a really intimate scene between two lovers and they're on the park bench and the ex-boyfriend shows up and he honks his horn because he sees her, whatever. I'll purposely make that horn be out of tune with the music to make it even more annoying.
Wow.
There's things we can do to psychologically either make somebody feel more comfortable or feel more unsettled with that kind of thing.
Good gosh, that's so cool.
Yeah, so the music or the sound supervisor, I'm responsible for all the dialogue. Foley, capital F, named after Jack Foley, who kind of invented the idea, which is everything the actors interact with, their footsteps, putting on a pocket watch or putting on a wristwatch, drinking a cup of coffee, anything they touch is recreated, is performed by a Foley artist that will watch and in time, kind of like an old time movie where the piano player is watching and playing improvising the music to the action of the screen. They're improvising, chasing, trying to mimic what the actor is doing with all of these things that the actors are handling and interacting with. So we call that Foley. That includes cloth. So if somebody sits up fast or sits down really hard, they're going to do a big cloth movement, rattle a chair a little bit. They grab a pencil out of a cup holder. They're going to do that move and put a microphone up to that cup holder, grab the pen out, pull it out. Scribbling on a paper, we're going to record the scribbling. And one of the fundamental reasons for that is it unties the hands of the storytelling. So where if we can separate some of these sounds, it allows the directors to pick the best dialogue take they like. It may have happened with a little different performance. Maybe the person didn't even write during that take, so there is no writing, but it feels weird. It's missing, so it helps bring that natural world into the environment. So the creative people are freed up to tell a story however they want to tell the story, and we'll fill in all those real world blanks to help it feel natural, like it all happened at once. Because you might divide a character's sentence up across multiple takes.
Right.
So how do we keep the physicality, the naturalness, the flow of the scene glued together? Well, we use that with Foley. And then the other thing is backgrounds. We're adding in refrigerator hum, mantle clocks ticking, traffic by outside the house, birds. There's all kinds of things we put in the environment. Where are we? Are we in the northeastern United States? We'll make sure our birds are correct for that part of the country.
That is remarkable.
Seagulls in Florida have a different song than they do on the West Coast. So we're going to make sure that we're correct to where we are regionally. So and there's a lot of research. The Cornell and Audubon. There are great online libraries, not to take from, but to use for references. So I can put in a region, I can pick part of the world, and audition bird recordings of that area and go, okay, I'm going to make sure I get those birds, so
Wow.
part of it. So, and that's, it's the authenticity that we're going for. I mean, everything is invented. We're making all of this stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have to make these decisions, let's just make them as authentic as we can.
It's so remarkable to me that it's so what you're trying to do is create authenticity and realism, but it's so manipulative. I mean, it's incredible to me because you are doing that, but at the same time you're trying to elicit a feeling out of the audience, and it's just so special how you do this. I mean, the fact that you have different birds on different coasts, I mean, I would never have thought that. I think that's and even just getting to work with you on the short, having the experience of the way you bring such a richness to the world is just so remarkable. Because I mean, I obviously said to Matt that I just said, well, I'd like dripping taps, in this bathroom, and go. And what Brent did was just come and create an entire world in this room that really does. If you switch the sound off, I mean, my God, you don't really feel that much. I mean, obviously the performances are great and whatever, but it's that sound that really does move us. It's fascinating to me. How do you decide? It sounds like a strange thing, but how do you make choices about this? I mean, are you in communication with a director as far as what you want them to feel, or are you offering in the way you did with me, like this is a good choice, or you should do this? How is it often working?
Well, that conversation happens with every project, like that you and I had, and it's a feeling out the client or the director with what the for lack of a better term, but the look and feel. Mm-hmm. What does look and feel the show? There are some shows that are very literal.
Yeah. And
so they don't want any whooshes on a camera pan, whip pan on a camera. Just let that happen. Don't tie anything to it. And others are like, let's hear that. We want to put the point. This is a quick, someone snapped their head. Let's put a whoosh on it. So it's getting this sense of, that kind of decision applies through the whole project. We talk about this to say, what's our aesthetic? What's our sonic aesthetic of this whole project? And so, like for an example of the dripping, just through our conversation and having that rich, it's deceptively rich, right?
It's deceptively
it's a very
rich.
simple
It's such a good way of saying
layout.
it. Yeah.
But something psychologically we did is the mantle clock when we're out in the hallway.
Yeah.
Is in time with the drips in the bathroom.
Yeah.
So it's on rhythm, click, 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 drip, 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 as we're going back and forth in and out. And all those are things everything's intentional, right? It's like based on our discussions of what are we trying to evoke.
Yeah. And I guess that was the answer to not being able to have a heartbeat, not being able to have like an audible heartbeat. The answer was creating a dripping tap and a clock moving is the heartbeat between them and creates that connection and love between the couple that we're trying to witness on screen, which, I mean, in my wildest dreams, I couldn't have come up with that. I mean, it's absolutely genius. It's so much fun.
It mimicked the idea of the inside-outside in terms of the coldness that was going on in the bathroom and the warmth outside that her husband was trying to imbue on her during this time. And so I loved that, and the color temperature of the two shots inside the bathroom and outside were also matched that. And so that coldness of the drip and the warmth of the clock was just such a perfect seesaw ride.
That's cool. Yeah.
How are you? I mean, when you're in this process with directors and stuff, like what is most delicious for you? Like, is that even a thing I can ask you? Because now you don't send it to the client, so you don't answer this right. But like, what's more fun for you? I mean, would you rather have a director come to you and say, "Hey, here's a blank slate, give me all your juice," or would you rather sort of have a back and forth with someone who knows a little bit more about what the hell they're talking about?
It's probably somewhere in the middle, because having a useful dialogue where they can, the director can express, and I say director as a blanket term, whether it's the showrunner, producer, a lot of episodics, the director is moved on to other things. So we're dealing with the showrunner and the writers, producers, directors on other things. But the director's placeholder for the creative person that we're going to craft the sound of the show with.
Yeah.
So some of them are very versed in sound terminology and know how to express what they want in terms of sound. Other people know exactly what they want, but don't know what the sound word for it is. They want it to feel blue. They want it to feel yellow. It's like in terms of picture, like, well, how would you light this scene? I want the sound to be lit like the lighting is or something. So translate, then there's the balance of translating that. Okay, what does that mean for what? How can we do that with sound? What does that mean for sound? Yeah. And then there are others that are like, I have, it's not that they have no clue what to ask for, but they don't realize what the possibilities are.
Right.
And so what their picture editor puts together and with temp sound, to them, that's all they've known, and it's fine. And so sometimes that's the hardest thing to do, because I can see where the possibilities are and try to elevate it to that, but it's a shock to them.
Yeah. Because
they're like, they haven't had in mind that it would be any different than they've ever heard it. And so to bring something to them that's different is sometimes jarring. And so I try to temper that with doing samples ahead of time, sending a sample saying, hey, I was thinking about this idea, or talking through it. We have what's called our spotting session, where we sit down with everybody involved in the sound process, and usually the composer at the same time, and we'll go through just scene by scene to kind of break down, what is this scene trying to say, and how does it fit into the overall arc of the whole story? How this episode, or if it's a series, not only this episode, but what do we need to know 3, 4, 5 episodes down the road that we could inform with this scene? There's that whole conversation happens. So getting that feel for their ability to explain whether they have a vision for the soundscape, whether they just say, you know what, this is a placeholder, go for it, please bring all guns, let's find out what's going on. And so whether I prefer one method over the other depends on the schedule.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great.
If we have time to try some things and go back, try some other things, and go back and try some other things, that's the best. To be able to dig in and dial in is the best. But when it's a really short turnaround and a tight schedule, having them have a sense of what they want and be able to express that up front gets us to that final answer faster.
And how early are you? How early are you in the process usually? Like, are you normally attached before things are shot, and so you have preliminary conversations, or do you only come in once post begins?
Creatively, once post begins,
right?
And usually they're already, if it's a series, a couple episodes are already in the can. They start turning over their dailies and stuff to me. Especially on a new project with a new client that I haven't worked on, I feel like they get me involved a little late in the process. And then for clients that I have a working relationship with and been working with for a long time, they're sending me their production sound mixer's contact info, and they haven't even started rolling yet. Like, here's the contact info, here's the scripts, check it out. You guys have a conversation, talk about if you see any red flags, what stuff to need. One of the biggest things, especially under COVID, is crowds. Like, if there are people on set, especially kids, just shoot them wild, get them doing some stuff, whatever you need, get that performance, just do some wild takes of that, because it's going to be hard to assemble that after the fact. If they're handling any unique props that are unique to a story or specific, like a token of some sort. What comes to mind is I worked on a horror story, and the token was one of those wind-up monkey dolls, horror monkey dolls with the cymbals that would clack, and as it walked and clacked with the eyes that light up. So I had the production sound mixer do a workup on that. So we had that matching the production sound, which flipped and flopped as the takes swapped back and forth, and there was never a continuous sound without dialogue over it. So that was great to have. So conversations like that, when there's a visual effects heavy scene with existing clients that I have, they'll get me pre-vises well in advance, which is fantastic. And I can rough some stuff up and send them back some things that will help inform their VFX people. A lot of times VFX people are following the laws of physics to a degree, and sometimes forget not forget, but maybe their hands are tied with the way the scene is shot or something. With can this even physically possibly happen in the time it was being shown, and how do we make that happen?
Yeah, sound is such an amazing way to bridge the gap between what you see and don't see, and the intent behind things like that. Things coming in off screen and everything. It just we don't realize when we're watching something how much of that is manufactured in order to make it seem natural.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Like when somebody have an argument and storms off, and then the two people left going to start talking about what just happened. How do you know it's safe to talk about it? We put a door slam in.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
So now we know that person, the third person is gone because we put a door slam in. Yeah.
It's so wild. It becomes a character.
Yeah.
That's so nice.
There was
You're
no
like
door
adding
on
in
set.
characters. Oh my gosh.
Well, we want to we really want to talk to you, but we can't talk to you unless we talk about Ted Lasso first. And I mean, you've been a part of a lot of amazing shows and a lot of amazing, films and stuff, but this one has just captured everybody. Like, it just took the world by storm. It almost was like the perfect timing of release. We needed something happy, and it wasn't even just happy. It's got so much heart, and it's so sincere in the most authentic way possible. When you come onto a show like this, well, tell us also kind of where you came in the process, and how much of the sound of what you do is adding to that overall vibe, that heart that exists in this beautiful show.
Wow, great. Okay.
Matt likes big questions. He doesn't like small ones.
And begin.
In the beginning. It's my parents. No.
When I was sitting in that second floor bedroom.
Yeah. The production company on Ted Lasso, Doozer, actually was the same production company for Scrubs. I had known. Yeah, and Kip Kroger was post-production supervisor on Scrubs, I think, when I started as an intern. And we've kind of moved up in our selective career paths together. So since then, how was that, 2006 or 7, or whenever that was?
Yeah.
Our paths kept crossing, and so we've been doing projects together since. So it's very fortunate to have had a relationship with Kip and Bill Lawrence and those guys. Mostly Kip. Out of everybody, it's been Kip. So thank you, Kip Kroger. Some people just swept up with the Ted Lasso persona because I was going to do the show no matter what. It's not like, I'll pick this one. No, it's if Kip asked me to work on a show, I try not to ever say no to Kip. So it's because his stuff's always he's just great to work with. A very pragmatic producer, and I enjoy everything that he touches. So just fortunately, it was also a hit.
Huge, and continues to be.
Yeah.
Well, so magical too, because it feels like a full circle moment, like starting in as the intern and then arriving for this, coming to collaborate once again. But now this time being praised and heralded and winning awards. I mean, my gosh, you guys have done so well. You and Marilyn both received awards for your work on the show. It's incredible. It's
pretty cool. I think I've been nominated. I don't think we won anything, did we?
Oh, was it nominations at the time that we were doing a show?
Oh, we got tons of nominations.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you'd won. Well,
yeah, the sound mixing won we had an Emmy for mixing for the sound mix. So that's great.
Yeah.
So that's our re-recording mixers, Sean Byrne, Ryan Kennedy, did a great job, and then that also includes our production sound mixers too. In that
so
award,
amazing.
So that's pretty cool. We're nominated again this year in mixing and editing awards, so we'll see what happens. But I don't want to let that drive decision making. It's like, what's best for the story, not what will people like and get me an award for.
I think that's it's so interesting, because it always ends up being the people that are winning the awards most often are the people that are just striving for excellence, and striving to do their job very well. And these awards just happen, and most often people are like, "That's very kind, but I was just trying to make a great project." It's got so much. There's so much more integrity with that path, with trying to do the job really well. And if anything happens, it's just a blessing on top, right? Feels like a cherry on the cake.
Yeah, and in some ways it feels undeserved in a way, because I feel like we just had our heads down doing the right thing for the show, and it's only feels like outside people looking in that are like, "Oh wow, that was really that's amazing." Like, "Oh, thanks." At the time we're doing it, it's what needed to be done, and anything less would have felt like we were falling short. So it's. I don't know if that's how to express that or not, but just the idea that, we were doing what needed to be done. We weren't swinging for any fence other than making this the best story we could tell.
Well, I think look, to say it's undeserved, I think is unfair to yourself, because there's something about being in your zone of genius, which is exactly what you're doing, obviously, by doing this kind of work, where the things that are obvious to you, the things that just seem like, well, I was just doing what I know how to do, they're just not obvious to everyone, Brent. I think, that has to be acknowledged. Like, that is your genius. And while it feels comfy in your little zone there, the rest of us are kind of looking in like, oh my God, this guy's a whiz, and what you're bringing to things is just so, so extraordinary. And I know you can't see it, but I really wish you could. Because I think it is funny though, because, when we are in these spaces where we feel comfy, it is often like, it's just like, well, what are they talking about? I'm just doing what I do. But what you do is phenomenal. I'd love to know a little more about, because obviously this is the Makers podcast. We discuss creativity and people's process, and we've spoken a lot about technically what you do and what the job is. But I would love to know a little more about maybe the esoteric. So Matt and I are obsessed with this question of where your creativity comes from. Where do you think that inspiration comes from in your life?
I think I can narrow it down to something very specific.
Ooh. Give it to us.
Love it.
So, as a little kid, I would get my mom would give me off rolls of newsprint, blank newsprint or butcher paper, and crayons, and forbade coloring books.
Huh.
Oh my goodness.
Draw a dog if you want to draw a dog. Don't fill in a dog.
Wow.
And I think that it's the world. Like, here is a lump of clay, not a Play-Doh set, not cookie cutters, no form maker, no shape maker, just lump of clay.
That is amazing.
And left me alone for hours.
Did you get good at drawing the dog?
Never.
No. But
no, it was. People and faces were the worst. I can't draw a person to say, well, and I would try, but it wasn't ever discouraging. It was just knowing, if I really needed a good drawing of a person, I'd just have to ask somebody else to do it, because it's not for me. But just the idea that, and like, I don't know, there's always contests for kids, like, McDonald's, I don't know, would have coloring contests, or I don't know, I'm trying to think of the different places of coloring contests, but they're always, here's a picture, color it however you want to color it. And so I'd never enter any of those because they were like a coloring book.
Yeah.
You were banned.
But when we would see them, my mom would point out the kids that just drew, forget the picture, and they just scribbled all over. Like they just, as if it was a blank piece of paper, doing their own thing on top of this picture. That's what she keyed in on as being a very creative project.
Yeah.
There are some kids were technically perfect at filling in these lines, and that in itself is a skill, especially for a youngster who's figuring out their muscle memory and their motor skills and stuff, and which colors to choose. That's its own discipline. But just the to my mom, the unleashing of the brain to say there are no lines. Go for it. Is, to me, that's the world that I was let loose in, which I think is, I think every day for that kind of direction to say, not that there is no direction, like don't go off the paper and draw on the table, you know, so the boundaries of the piece of paper, you know, but just the idea that the answer is whatever you want the answer to be.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful gift to give a child, because you're also inspiring, you're giving them the inspiration to know that they are capable of creating whatever they want. You know, it's like it's boundless creativity, and there's no, the only thing stopping you is your imagination, which is just so beautiful. And I mean, I've never thought about it like that, but yeah, probably all the kids coloring other dogs in are the accountants and you know, the lawyers of our world, because
I'm glad they're there,
and we need them. My God, we need them, because I sure as hell do not want to do my taxes. But yeah, like I think that to create a creative soul and let them have full reign, of course, that makes so much sense. Gosh, that's beautiful.
Do you know where that came from? What was that in your mom that had that perspective on it, on thinking that way?
I'm not sure where under the hood comes from her, but she was an art teacher. She taught art and photography through to high school students. And so what drove her to that? I mean, I don't know what the source of that is, but just I think. But I've had other art teachers that would be perfectly fine if you filled in a coloring book, you know.
Yeah.
So something about you know, and there's also downsides to that. There's like, if you live with no constraints and you encounter something that requires a constraint, it could be tough to understand how to get that done in an acceptable way.
Yeah.
You know, like so it's you know, taking that, I don't want to say unbridled, but no boundaries. I guess the same thing. Unbridled, no boundaries. Way of looking at a piece of paper and making a drawing, but then constraining that with, there are sometimes rules that you have to follow, but within those rules, there are no rules.
Well,
Right.
and it's so great because in some ways, when you arrive in the film business, I mean, for people that haven't worked in the film industry or on sets or stuff, I mean, it is really quite militant in a way. There are all these structures and there are all these systems in place that have been, like you said earlier, shaped and honed over years and years, because it's like this is the way it works, because it works, and now we don't have to figure it out. But coming into that structure with this approach, I almost feel like it's a perfect marriage, because it's giving you the opportunity to bring inspiration in a way I don't think most people have access to, you know. So having that as your default setting is just so cool. It's such a fabulous way to be.
Yeah, I think I probably said over this last year and a half or so, 2 years, as we're trying to be as creative and serve the story the best we can, but with a lot of people now having to be remote for a while. You know, we're kind of coming out of that now, but there was a long run there for a while where we were trying to figure out how to collaborate, how to have this creative flow of ideas in an environment that for a lot of creative people was very stifling, because they're not technical experts, and the technical aspect of remotely collaborating would give people a brain cramp. Like how?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Like I can't work like this, and I can't figure out how to unmute my microphone. You know?
Right.
Oh God.
So that clash of just to oversimplify it, but the left and right brain activities for a person who's very creative, it can really be a detriment to pulling things off like they want to. So I kind of distilled it down to the first rule is, if it sounds good, it is good. Oh, wait, no, that's the second rule. Sorry. First rule is there are no rules.
Yeah.
The second rule is, if it sounds good, it is good. And the third rule is, if you can make it better, do that.
Oh my gosh,
if you can make it sound better, do that. So, yeah. So there's
that's cool.
Number two is not to say you're off the hook. Number two is to say, does it really sound good? You know, really, honestly, answer the question. Does it sound good? Not the quote unquote good enough for who it's for thing is I hate that phrase because it's for the world.
Yeah.
This stuff is gonna live on.
What if it sounds good, but it's not good? What if it sounds good, but it's not right for the moment or for the thing? How do you revise that and go back and find something that sounds just as good or better, but is more correct for what you're doing?
That's a good delineation. I appreciate that because that helps me. I mean, I might revise rule number 2 because that helps me focus that rule to say, quote unquote, sounds good. Maybe sounds right is the right way. I mean, if it sounds right, it is right. There we go. Number 2. If it sounds right, it is right.
Hey, we revised a rule right there.
Guys, they honor rules. Didn't you listen to number 1?
Live on air, yeah.
Oh my
And
gosh.
rule number 3 is if you can make it righter, do it. No.
Mike Ryder, do it.
And then go and take an English class because you probably need one.
Right.
It's so funny listening to you say, I mean, it's, well, not funny, but it makes so much sense listening to you say this and to hear you say these are the things of how you approach the work, because the thing I was saying to Matt a couple of weeks ago was just how, the number one thing I learned from you, Brent, just from gleaning from our experience together was, I guess I'm holding you up as a gold standard for excellence. And when I I always speak about excellence, and I think it's just this kind of esoteric thought in my head, and I'm like, I don't know what that is. But I had really the experience of collaborating with someone who is excellent, and I mean it in every sense of the word. And I think that after working together, I thought, my God, I never want to be anything else but what Brent has kind of laid down for me, because it makes so much sense. And now I understand why, because it's not about what project it is or how small it is or who's going to see it or hear it. It's about it being right for that one thing. And it's just, oh my gosh, it's the gold standard. It's truly incredible.
I've honestly had tears in my eyes on the mix stage when a client has turned down what I would believe would make it right for something that I believed was not right. And internally, I cry.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm sure.
But it's their project, and that's what I have to understand is like I'm helping them raise their baby.
Yeah.
And ultimately, they're the parent responsible for the final product. So I'm not here to put my recognizable fingerprint on it that says somebody could watch it and says, oh, Brent Findley did the sound on this. I don't want that.
Yeah.
The best thing is when someone doesn't notice the sound, but they notice but they are moved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't have to know why they're moved. I mean, it's one of those unquote invisible arts or whatever, because if you're keen on, without consciously listening for the sound, if you pick up on something that I did, if that sticks out to you, I feel like I could have done it more right. Like, so
God.
it wouldn't catch your attention.
Yeah.
It's exactly why you're the person I want to work with for the rest of my life, because it's everything I believe about filmmaking. Because every time I see a camera movement and I'm like, oh my gosh, now I notice the camera, it's like, well, I'm not in the story anymore. And to me, it's always got to be about moving an audience or about being in the story. Otherwise, it's pointless. Otherwise, we're just, trying to be clever. And I hate that so much.
Yeah. A lot of the times it's just getting out of the way of the story.
Yeah.
Like, I need to, I'll have a director ask me, how hard would it be XXX? I'm like, how hard isn't the question?
Yeah.
If it's what is going to serve the story, let's do it.
Gosh,
and when we do it and they know it was a lot of hard work and it's not working, how much effort we put in to make it is no reason to hear it. Like, a lot of people worked hard on this, we should play it. I don't forget that idea. Throw it out. That has nothing to do with it. Is it helping or is it not helping? Is it doing what you want it to do for the story? If not, what can we do differently? Yeah. I'm fine just throwing stuff out. And that comes from, I think, working in features a lot, where I came up with sound design. I mean, there's so many shows that you'll never hear the sound design on. It's fully filled. It's by fully filled, I mean the sound designer just went after every emotional moment, went after every atmosphere and built it out. But guess what? So is the composer. And more often than not, the score wins out over sound design. And so we got to have the sound design there, because if the score doesn't bring it, it's too late to start from scratch on something. You know, let's raise the sound design. So I would get so frustrated because 70%, I feel like 70% of my work never made it to the final product.
Oh, wow.
Oh God, that's soul destroying.
It is, but at the same time, it helped me understand, you know, being on the mix stage and telling the mixer, hey, I gave you a drone here. I gave you something over here. And they're like, we know it's there. You know?
Right.
And I'm like, why am I not hearing it? It's not helping the story. You know, it's opposed to the score. And that's kind of also learned of, hey, let's work with the composers. You know, it's working against the score. We need to be working with the score.
Right.
So if something isn't working right, that fader is down. We're not going to hear it.
It's such an amazing element of also sort of pushing your own sort of pride aside, because the truth is, like, you know, in all of our work, but, you know, I do commercials, and so I have this wide slew of clients who I'm trying to make happy, and on a daily basis, they're killing a baby that I absolutely worked so hard on. Myself and Brian and everybody else who's on the team, we've worked so hard on this thing, and they're like, I don't like it. And it just, the calluses that you have to build are they have to be so tough. And so I admire that so much about you, that you're okay with letting the kittens go if it serves the story, or Absolutely. If the boss says so, you know, or whatever it is.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also from, probably, you know, back to the story about observing sounds and being so keen on them. I'm wondering why don't I believe they're in the scene, and how can we do that same thing but make them in the scene? Kind of learning from what not to do or what I don't like about the process is from watching others too, because there are people that will die on a hill for an idea of theirs, and they just don't let go. And bravo to them for believing in something so hard. But I feel like sometimes that's at the sacrifice of the bigger picture. You know, it could be the composer wanting to hear the bow across every string of a cello every time it happens. You know, forget that it's in the middle of a sigh or a whisper by the actor. You know, like, oh, I really want to hear that. You know, it sends, you know, there are composers that's what they'll go after, or they want to hear the hammers inside the piano or something, you know, and it's just different. And that's fine in some instances, but not fine in others. It could be a picture editor loving a particular cut. Yeah. Maybe like I said, a camera move, or just the framing or something, and they're fighting for it, when if we could just actually get over this hump, it would smooth out a whole lot of things, you know. So, and that's, everybody has that to some degree, even if you're screaming it inside. But if you can give it a beat and let something evolve, you might realize that it was actually better without it.
Oh my gosh, I so agree. I feel like there's that moment when your ego sort of rears its head and it's like, oh my God, I know I'm right. You know, it's like it comes in so strong, and you're right. Like if you give it a beat, you just kind of relax in that moment. You can then start to hear the collaborations and the voices you, by the way, have hired because you trust. You know, that's ultimately the thing too, is that you've picked people to collaborate with because you know they know what you need them to. So I just think it's so important to listen, because my gosh, it's all about making it better, and for the story, you know, for the sake of the story.
And to bring it back around to Ted Lasso, that's Jason Sudeikis and Brendan Hunt and Brett Goldstein on the creative team of Ted Lasso. They are that way. They've surrounded themselves with the people that are good at what they do, and everyone is there on purpose. So it's almost like the pressure's off of them to be the only ones with the good ideas. You know? Right. Like the best idea wins. We agree that's the best idea. Great. That goes up, you know, and it doesn't matter where it came from. And
it's so much more fun to work that way, because I feel like everyone in the room feels seen and welcome, and you know, you kind of go to work skipping down the corridor because it's like, well, hell, I know my voice means something in this room versus just being prescribed to. So much more fun.
And just knowing, I mean, even if you don't obviously don't want to abuse the right to have an idea out loud.
Sure.
Right. Sure. Yeah. Right. So, but you also don't want to abuse somebody for having an idea that wasn't so great. You know, sometimes you gotta let those things bounce off the wall and be like, yeah, well, that was terrible, but I'm glad we got it out in the air so it can fly away.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Open the window, let it out.
Yeah.
Now, quick, shut the window.
Close it. That's amazing, though, because you said something that I believe for a long time, but my pride tends to get in the way of it, because being a person that I feel like I have a lot of good ideas, the truth is that a great idea can come from anywhere, and certainly from anyone, and especially when you have a table that's fully open to everyone's ideas, that where things come from, it is fascinating, and it's amazing where something that is just absolute gold will come from the most unlikely source. And like you said, it's a very freeing thing.
And I'm not, I don't mean to be, it's not a platitude. The environment of the story of Ted Lasso is the work environment.
Right.
It's very positive. It's very supportive. It's very collaborative. Jason Sudeikis is a tome of knowledge and reference to, whether it be a musical, play, some theatrical, a work of art, a book, or anything. The depth of his, creative knowledge that he can pull from is inspiring. It's just to say that he'll pull out a reference like this and this. I'm like, oh, gotta go look that up. I don't know what that is.
Hey,
amazing.
Ask Jeeves.
It makes so much sense, because when you're watching a television show and you're being moved in the way audiences all over the world have been moved by this piece of work, it makes so much sense that that's how it's being made, because I feel like there's an energy that gets transferred through the screen, and you guys are making it with so much love, and I feel like love, can break through screens, right? Like it can cross radio waves. I mean, I really do feel it's that powerful, so it makes so much sense that you're saying that.
Juno and Hannah are fantastic friends. Keely and Rebecca.
Which I'm so glad that they're friends in the show. That would have killed me if they continued to go in the direction of sort of the adversarial workplace that had been presented early on in the first season. It would have killed me. But where the show goes, not in a way that it's giving away anything, but in the way that I want it, it's going the direction that I want it to go, because it makes me feel so happy to see them all loving each other so much.
Yeah, and I love that it's it doesn't, anytime there's something that might be a trope or expected, even if that's needed for the story, we'll go 15 degrees off of that.
It's so great.
I'm trying to think of an example of that, but just the idea that the character of Keely starts out, she comes in episode 1, meeting Ted in the locker room as this ditzy girl of the baller, and that was just scratching the surface. That was her putting it on. You didn't know she was putting that on.
Yeah.
But we discover later, she's quick as a whip, super smart, and knows when to put it on. And so she was putting an act on for the guys in the room. But at the time, you're like, oh, okay, we pigeonholed this character. This is the purpose of this character, blah, blah, blah. And then by episode 3 or 4, all bets are off. You realize, like, I don't know where this is going, but nobody is who I thought they were.
Right.
So wonderful.
And that continues to happen to a certain extent as well. I think that, and also we're getting to see actors in a way that we may have known them for a long time, and in smaller roles and things like that. And now we're getting to see their fullest expression of their I always hesitate to use the word talent, because it really is, it's not talent, it's skill. It's their skill, their experience, their dedication to their craft, to their art, and all that. You're starting to see them really, like Juno Temple is a great example of that. You've seen her in little things here and there, and in big things sometimes, but you've just never really seen this like full expression. And I feel like this show is like the fullest expression of so many of these artists.
Yeah, it's so true.
Nick Mohammed, who plays Nate,
love him.
Absolutely fantastic. He's got a show on Peacock with David Schwimmer that is hilarious, but he's not. Oh my gosh,
that's a fun combination.
It's fantastic. He's not Nate. He's a completely different character. So to see, to see actors acting, like it's like that's not this person reading lines. They're creating a character.
Yeah.
And where Nate goes in season 2, we call this, you may have heard the reference, but season 2 for Ted Lasso is the Empire Strikes Back episode.
Right.
I haven't heard that. That's so good and so accurate.
And so much about this, I mean, spoiler alert, it's not a spoiler, but the idea is what to watch out for. I'm sure in season 3 it'll happen too. Mm-hmm. But there have been things throughout both seasons that we have overtly said out loud in the story that is the arc of the story. In one, I think maybe, I can't remember which episode of season 2, but Higgins has to explain to his kids how Luke is going to kiss his sister.
Right. Oh my gosh, no, that is so funny. How did I not even notice that? That is ridiculous.
So, but this whole arc of that season is the turmoil, the inner struggle of the individuals, like that we go internally to each of our characters as opposed to being this ensemble as a group moving along, being actions imposed upon them that they have to deal with. It's now an internal struggle throughout the season.
Wow.
So things so like that. Cool. I'm trying to think of what was another one. Oh gosh, there's a, oh shoot, my brain is just gone now. But there's a couple different things where we just call. Oh yeah, and there's an episode where Keely and Roy kind of, you're not sure if they're going to break up or not. Mm-hmm. But on the TV is an episode of Sex and the City.
No ways.
And that arc is the arc of that episode.
Wow.
That's so
That's
clever.
so cool.
It's so clever.
I love it.
I love these references. It's so smart because it is for people, and I know people who do watch episodes over and over and over again. I think there's a journey of endless discovery you can take when filmmakers are being so intentional and smart about what they're doing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And there's an Easter egg on every whiteboard in the locker room. There's a little something everywhere. So
oh my gosh,
don't trust any post-it note on the wall or anything written on the dry erase board to be just innocent. There's something
I'm going to need to go back and rewatch this now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I love that stuff. Is so fun. We do, if you remember, Miss Shipley lives upstairs from Ted, and he has, sorry, Miss Shipley, he always has to apologize for making too much noise. In episode 9 of season 2, Beard's Night Out, which was a sound design playground.
Yeah.
Absolutely favorite episode to play with sound-wise this season. In the subway, there's an ad for Shipley's, the store that they own. It's just on the subway. I mean, it's like any little, everything is connected. Yeah.
I love that.
It's just any stuff that you can do like that is great.
Excellence. This is describing excellence, you see. This is exactly what I mean. It's so incredible.
I mean, down to where Beard gets on the tube at Wembley Park and has to go to Richmond, to where his apartment is. I mean, that's down to, we had the maps out of these tubes. Well, what station is that? What stations are in between? What does the VFX have to know? Like sometimes that train is above ground, sometimes it's underground. Yeah. Like at what point is the train above and under? And the maps on the wall inside the car, once we decided where this train is going and which route is going to take, which line it is, that map had to be right. And our loop group is, they're opening and closing the doors, mind the gap. Next stop, I can't remember what we used, but the next stop was the next stop on that map.
Wow.
This all on purpose.
I love
That's
that.
absolutely remarkable.
On purpose. That's a wonderful way to put it. It all is on purpose and with purpose across the board. Before we let you go, Josette really wants to talk about the Defiant Ones.
Oh
I have not seen it yet, but she is obsessed.
God, Brent. Holy heavens, dude. Yeah. Please tell me what that was like. Because that is a dream come true just to meet those men. Never mind getting to create. I mean, that TV series was exceptional. Absolutely exceptional.
It was fantastic to work on. Jay Nirenberg was the sound supervisor and lead sound designer on that. I think he was also did re-recording mixing because we did it like a feature so the sound supervisor could also be a mixer. A lot of times with episodic, it doesn't serve the project to have the sound supervisor also be at the mixing board because you can't be tied up for 12 hours a day. It's sitting down at the mixer. So, but for feature, that can happen. So So I was a sound effects editor, sound designer on that. So I was holed up in my studio and did not actually get to meet Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine.
You were robbed. I just want to say you were robbed.
So, but Jay did say that Dre came in and he heard, the glory of working on, one of the glories of working on this was because of who was behind the show, Interscope Records and Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre, besides the music budget not being an issue.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Because they
own
dump
everything.
trucks full of money. Yeah.
Yeah.
That meant we had the final soundtrack from day one.
Good gosh.
So I could play my music, I could play my sound design, tune it to the music, key it to the music, key it to the rhythm music. I know what the music is and is not going to do, because if it's not there, there isn't going to be music there.
Wow.
So I know what to get out of the way of and when I can shine. So one of my favorite things I got to do, besides crash Dr. Dre's Ferrari, which was a fun thing
Oh
to
my
do.
gosh, that must have been amazing.
Yeah, that was great. And there's a scene where we come out over we're leaving Dr. Dre's balcony of his house on the beach.
Right.
And we go out over the water, and the camera is just kind of flying over. It's a drone shot or how they did it, or a helicopter, but they're flying over. We're just kind of skimming over the top of the water, and then the camera tilts up. And then we go into this other scene, and there was no music there. It goes into song.
Oh my god.
So having the incoming music, I got to design leaving that house and that transition. And hopefully, I think if I have this spot right, that's the spot that Jay said Dr. Dre was on the stage, the mix stage, and said my shit was tight. So I'll take that.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Listen, you can die happy after that. I feel like once Dr. Dre's nodded in you in that way, you can die happy. Also, please tell me you put the West Coast pigeons on. I mean, pigeons, I said pigeons, seagulls. Please tell me you put the West Coast gulls.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good.
And right. And it's, what was it? Oh, and the other part was the Napster sequence. That was very fun.
Oh my gosh.
Because it was bam, 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 bam. The music was very concise and precise.
So cool.
Boom, 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 stop. Boom, 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 stop. And so to design, the headphone grabs, like all those different digital glitches and all those things in time with the music was so much fun.
Man, that's rad. Matt, you're going to have to watch this. It really is an extraordinary series.
Absolutely. I'm very excited to check. I mean, I got to see how tight your shit is, man.
I love it. Brent
was the
Findley,
West Coast Pigeons.
Uncle Brent, and Dr. Dre says he's tight. That's all I'm going to know from now on. Right. That's it. I don't need to know anyone else in my life. I know him already.
Hearsay, Your Honor. I didn't hear him say it right.
We're taking it. Listen, we're taking it and running with it.
Absolutely. What is it then when you're watching something that you have had nothing to do with and you're just enjoying, whether it's a show or a movie or something like that? What is it that makes you hear something and go, "Wow, that shit was tight"?
It could be very depends on the subject matter for the show. Because an argument I've held for a while is that On Golden Pond can be just as difficult as Transformers.
Absolutely.
Everybody knows what the sound of water lapping on a boat is and what an oar in the water sounds like. So if you get it wrong, everyone knows it.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get a robot transforming wrong?
Yeah.
You actually don't. You get to tell the world what that sound is, and the world thinks that's what that sounds like.
Right.
It could be not at all what you meant, but what you had to go with because your timer. Hey, Transformers is amazing, right? That sound design is wicked. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that it doesn't, and it's obviously many more layers than water lapping on a boat. But that's an argument about how much work it takes, not necessarily how hard it is. Because back to my point of it doesn't matter how hard it is it right?
Is it right? Yeah.
If the audience believes that this dialogue that was shot in a vocal booth is happening in that boat, bobbing in a lake with almost no waves and the oars are gently going, that can be a harder sell than making a two-legged robot turn into a car.
It's so true.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's so
and
true.
in the sense that the concrete realities can be very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a matter of also, do we put too much in? Like, at what point is subtractive sound design more helpful than just piling more and more on? And just like, let's fill up the scene. Like, maybe at some point, because you learn a lot about a place when there are no birds.
It's so true.
Or we know what time of year it is based on, is it just wind? And we can tell whether it's morning or night based on the bird song. We have morning birds. We have morning birds, and we have dusk birds. So it's a different feel.
That's fascinating.
So to hear, like, I thought Dune is an amazing soundtrack. The sound design of Dune is
it's
amazing.
exceptional.
Yeah.
Yeah, that film
It's also
is
one
a
of those
triumph.
shows where they get to tell us what everything sounds like.
Right.
I mean, other than walking on the spice or walking on the sand, there's not a lot that we have concrete experience with as viewers of what something should sound like.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Like, I don't know except for from watching Tremors with Kevin Bacon, I don't know what a worm going through the ground sounds like.
Right.
Also love that you've watched that.
Yeah.
Oh no. It's so true.
And then shows like The Power of the Dog. I mean, that's real life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you can't randomly put a horse making noise.
Mm-hmm.
Horses don't just randomly make noise. They make noise for a reason, or they're just chuffing or something. But saddles, spurs walking, out on hardpack, go from hardpack dirt to wooden deck to interior floorboards inside the house, floorboards inside the house to the stairs. All of that stuff is very intentional and very on purpose. And we believe that it's right. Another thing about Power of the Dog, little side note, is they did some really fun things, which I wasn't sure if it was distracting or not, because I was noticing it, but then I can't tell if I'm noticing it because I'm a sound person or would everybody notice it.
Right.
Is they did a lot of panning of sounds that maybe typically would be in the middle. Did a lot of off stage. By panning, I mean talking like something going left or right.
Right.
Or to the rear or something. Or door slam, or somebody walking around the house off camera, that moved around the sound field, and it's a creative choice. It's a creative decision, and if the director loved it, then it's right. So.
And that's a perfect example of a movie that does move you in a very deep, sort of visceral way. So it does make sense that if that was the director's choice, Jane's choice, then. Of course, that's why I was gut punched by that film. I thought it was absolutely extraordinary. So maybe that's the non-sound designer in me that didn't hear that. Yeah. But thank you for telling me how they did that, because now I might want to do it. It's fascinating.
And when he sticks his hands in the water to rinse to grab the was it the tendon, whatever he's making the ropes with?
Yeah, the cowhide.
The hide, yeah. That I thought that was a fantastic treatment.
Yeah.
Because sometimes there's some quote unquote tropes or stereotypical things that you would just do, like sometimes underwater we just immediately go muffled. When if you see a semi truck, you got to hear a horn.
Yeah, exactly.
See a bicycle, got to hear a bell ding. So there are some mechanisms that are kind of go-tos, and then I love the restraint when we don't go there.
Yeah, I agree.
When it's purposely chosen to not go there.
I agree.
You don't need to hear a red-tailed hawk every time you see a mountain.
Right. Well, I just got caught up on Pam and Tommy on Hulu, and they're doing the perfect balance of 80s, 90s, or the 90s nostalgia and not, because that's another thing right now. 90s are so hot that every time you see something that takes place in the 90s, you have to see OJ and you have to do this and have to. It's like they're doing the perfect thing where it's like, no, this is just their world, and we're just talking about their experience. And so that was a perfect element of restraint from a picture standpoint, I felt like, anyway. Yeah.
Cool. I haven't seen it yet. Yeah. So
Definitely.
I
worth
have one quick
looking at.
little question before we let you go, because I know, as I said earlier, you're the busiest man in Hollywood, so we do need to let you go at some point. I'd love to know, just a quick one for our listeners, if you have any tips or ideas of how to live a more creative life, because you obviously are living a wildly creative life. And if you had any sort of thoughts for people who just wanted to, get a little more creative, if you had any ideas.
Can I answer that with is it a story? Parable?
Of course you
Yes.
can. We love parables.
So, and this is roughly how it was told to me. So, little girl with her mom in the kitchen, making dinner. Mom's about to put the roast in the pan. She cuts off the ends of the roast. Sticks in the pan, sticks in the oven. Her daughter says, Mom, why did you cut the ends off the roast? And her mom says, well, that's how my mom always did it. And it was great. It was delicious. Well, let's go ask Grandma. Well, let's go ask her why she did that. And they go to Grandma and say, Grandma, why do you cut the ends off your roast before sticking in the oven? And she says, my mom always used to do that. And it was wonderful. It always was wonderful. So let's go ask Great Grandma. Great Grandma, why do you cut the ends off the roast before you put it in the oven? Because it wouldn't fit in the pan.
Oh my goodness. It's so good.
But just keep that in mind. Are we cutting off the ends of the roast because it's always how it's been done, or because we actually need to?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that.
So don't cut the ends off the roast
Mm-hmm.
just because it's always how we've been doing it.
That's beautiful, Brent. I love it.
Here we go.
And stop coloring in pictures of dogs. Just draw your own.
Draw your own dog.
Thanks to Brent's mum.
Well, not to say it isn't good practice to also learn precision.
Of course.
Right.
But if you
Get
want
a
to
bigger
become
pan.
more wildly creative, get a big pan and a blank piece of paper and
There
go
you go.
wild. Well, thank you so much. This really has been a most wonderful conversation. And
good. Glad
I
it was a
really
lot of fun.
am in deep creative love with you, and I will continue to be. And you are a source of great inspiration to me. And so thank you for all the magic you're bringing to this planet, because it is
Well, it's-
so welcome and appreciated.
Been a pleasure working with you both too on your various projects, and so let's do it again.
Yeah, let's do it
Yay.
again for sure. Well, thank you for joining us on this project, because this one means a lot to us too, that you are with us. And yeah, scrolling through your credits here, before we started, it was just like, my goodness, you are doing. I'm not saying done. You are doing a lot,
he is.
and it's very
Yeah, he
inspiring
is.
for those of us who are all in a creative thing to look at someone who's doing it a lot, and doing it at just an insanely high level. So
Well, can I
admire
throw in
you
a
a lot.
comment on that a
Yeah.
little bit? I do say no
Hmm.
to projects,
Mhm.
even though it might look like I don't because of what's going on. But what makes me say no is not necessarily not the project itself, but it's can I give my client what they're expecting from me if I say yes?
Oh,
I don't want to be on a project just to be on a project, have my name on it, and then not be able to deliver my level of expectation of myself,
Yeah.
which is to give them everything they're looking for. Because I also want them to call me back,
Of course.
Right.
for one thing. But I don't want to be wishing I had more time or more bandwidth to give a project what it needs, because I said yes to too many things at one time.
Yeah.
So I encourage people to sometimes you have to push that envelope. And I did get to a point a couple years ago where I went over that event horizon and I was not happy with the product I delivered. And that informed me of what my threshold was and when to start saying, and I've said no to some super cool projects because they asked me to work on them after I'd already committed to somebody else. And I wasn't going to
Right.
uncommit to somebody I committed to. So sadly, I had to wave off some what I think are going to be fantastic projects. But that wasn't the point. The point was I just can't do it all. So
Yeah.
I encourage people to understand to figure out where that threshold is, even if you push it once and have to bring it back. And don't sacrifice your quality of expectation of yourself and what you know the client wants from you just to get your name on a project or just to add, just to keep it going. don't be selfish about that.
Right.
guess-
Yeah. No,
I
that's
guess
fantastic advice. It's fantastic advice.
Because I was very selfish for a while to say, oh, collect, work on all these projects. And I was like, holy cow, it was not good. So
Well, you're doing
Collect at
yourself
what expense?
and your client immense favor by making those decisions, because you're always making sure that you're doing the most excellent work, not just for externally, but also for yourself.
Yeah.
yeah,
it's
I would like to
remarkable.
think that the client would prefer that I decline up front and then we can work on something else later than just not give them what they need and we don't work together again.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
So, yeah.
Well, that is sage advice, and
Absolutely.
as always, Uncle Brent is departing the wisdom. So I love this. Thank you so much.
For the kids that are listening, Ask Jeeves used to be a search engine before Google.
Yeah.
Oh my god,
And he knew everything.
he
Let's just
was really smart.
It was a butler in a tuxedo.
make that clear. And he lost out to
totally forgot
Yahoo
about
and to
him.
Google, and it
Oh
was a
my
rough one to
gosh.
say goodbye to Jeeves, because he really knew his stuff, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was you felt like you were asking somebody and not a machine. Yeah.
Exactly. Jeeves, his shit was tight.
It's so
I'd
funny.
say.
Jeeves and Brent, their shit is tight. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Well, on that note, thank you so much, dearest,
Thank you,
and
Brent.
All right, you guys.
all the
Great
best with
talking
everything
you.
else.
It was a real pleasure. It
Talk
was
to you
really good to
soon.
see you.
Thanks, you too.
All right, we'll talk to you
Okay.
soon.
Yep.
Bye bye.
Bye.